Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Papers Podcast, where we make sense of the medical education literature to help you make sense of your day. I'm here with the usual cast of characters. First, there's Jason.
Hi, everybody.
And, of course, there's John.
Hey, Lara. Hi, everyone.
And today, my friend Linda has an interesting paper for us. Linda, why don't you take it away?
Thanks very much, Lara. Just before I do, I'm going to give a shout out to one of our listeners from Latin America, Isabel Lara Melanchthon. She is a fan of ours. She listens on the way to work. She likes pretty much all of the discussions we have and the suggestions you give to researchers. Then she says, and this is for Lara, and the reason I'm mentioning it here is maybe we'll come back to it when we talk about our rating process. She says, not to mention, she likes the voting process and Lara's currency voting.
Ooh.
And to get this, and Lara's currency voting, which she doesn't really understand, but she gets the point. Thank you.
Love it.
We're used to not understanding Lara, too.
Yeah. So, muchas gracias to Isabel. So the paper that I'm going to be discussing today is, I have entitled Shaping Faculty Development Expertise 8 Steps at a Time. It kind of sounds like a 12 steps process, but I don't think it is. The actual title of the paper is A Common Trajectory Towards a Professional Identity as a Faculty Developer. By Kiso, Mount Bunin, McBain, McFate, Hartzell, and Servey in Family Medicine 2023. And I was sort of interested in this paper because I've been working with some colleagues here about identity. And we all have our personal identity and our professional identity, or perhaps we have a few. Jason's an emerge doc, I'm an internist, and then we possibly, or most likely with us, all have a teacher identity. So can we also have an identity as a faculty developer? And do we actually need one? And if we have one, how does it evolve? And how can we foster its development? And is it really important? So that's what we're going to discuss today.
I like how Linda didn't mention John has a clinical career. That tells us a lot, actually, about, John's clinical skills. I'm just saying. It's kind of implicit there.
Yeah,
I just want to make
John,
it
I was going to actually, I didn't say anything about Lara either. I was just using you as a horrible example.
I am a horrible example of many things.
So listen, we know that professional identity formation, or PIF, is incredibly complex. We're busy revising our diagram with all the factors that influence it, and it's got multiple arrows going to multiple things. Yet it's a critical process. Some would say it's the most important process in health professions education, describing how people see themselves and how others see them in a workplace setting of any kind, and how this evolves over time. And what I liked of this paper was to summarize how PIF has two parts. One is the individual psychological development, and the second is the collective socialization into one or multiple roles. And one of these roles might be as a faculty developer. So the authors, and I'm going to ask you a question after I have described how the authors describe Fac Dev. And the question is this a good description? And are these the only skills? So listen up, you three. The authors describe the faculty developer role as delivering faculty development activities by actively fostering the professional identity formation of academic faculty through active experiences, promoting reflection, and relationship building. The faculty developer must be skilled in education methods and facilitation, encouraging reflection across a diverse set of faculty and specialties. So, John, Lara, Jason, is that Fac Dev for you?
I do think that that's a good description of what faculty development is. I'm still wrestling with whether there is a professional identity as a faculty developer. And so the premise of the manuscript, I'm still not sure I get the what before I can get into the who cares part of it. Not that I don't care about this paper, but my point is that I think we have a professional identity as a health professional, so my clinical element. And then I might have a subdomain. So whether it's a researcher or an administrator or an educator. And so I probably have a subdomain as a clinician, educator, professional development. But now you're asking me whether I have a subdomain, professional identity, as a clinician, educator, faculty, developer. And as much as I'm a splitter rather than a lumper, I think in this case, I might be a lumper. And I'm just not getting at least for me, and this is just my experience, whether I would imagine this, to which I would say, hey, maybe this manuscript is not speaking to me because I don't identify as a faculty developer, and others within the literature and within the HPE landscape do.
For me, I'm
sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think that was the question.
No, it wasn't a question, and you've stolen my thunder for later on, but that's okay, John. Sniff, sigh, boo-hoo.
Oh, sniff, sigh. It's fine. So I'm going to echo what John has to say, and Linda, I will answer your question. So just to echo John, I'm not sure. I think you can I'm not sure this is an all or nothing criteria. I think you can feel somewhat like a professional faculty development person at sometimes, and sometimes you're not. I think depends on your role. If you're the assistant dean of faculty development, I hope for instance, your PIF is oriented around that concept. But if you're in the undergrad med space and you're mostly teaching in a different space, then perhaps you don't think of yourself as a fac dever unless you're asked to give a small topic on something. And that actually brings me to my next point. So in terms of the role of faculty development, I'm not sure it's an all or nothing. I think there's a continuum. The other part, though, you asked about expertise and skills and what these people do and what the skills they need to be able to do. I think the list that's provided here is a list that I could put for a lot of leaders. And I think that there's a lot of leadership built into this definition. And the part that gave me cause for pause is that knowledge of content wasn't listed as an area of expertise for a faculty developer. And personally, and this is absolutely 100% my personal opinion and does in no way reflect the attitudes, position of anybody else on this recording. I don't think that everyone can deliver good faculty development on all topics. So I think you need to have content expertise to be delivering faculty development on a specific topic. You don't want me giving a faculty development session on psychometrics. You could give me the slides. You could even give me a script to follow. And I could do that, but now I'm not faculty development. You gave me a script. I'm an actor, and I'm trying to give this script all the life it can have to make this an interesting topic. I'm not an expert who is actually helping to educate attendees to become more knowledgeable. So for me, faculty development or an identity as a faculty developer demands expertise on a topic being addressed. Otherwise, your PIF as a faculty developer is akin to that of an actor reading a script. And I don't think that's what these authors want, but I was concerned that it wasn't in that list.
Lara. So Linda, don't worry, I'll rescue this question because John and Lara have distracted us.
I totally answered a question.
No, it distracted us. So here.
Can we always appreciate the delicious irony of you taking the high road of saying you're like the most political of us all, who never hears a question that he doesn't want to answer a different sermon
just
to.
Answers a different question, yeah.
So anyway, I'm getting a lot of pushback from people who are wrong, but that's okay. Linda, don't worry, I'll rescue this conversation because I know that you love faculty development. It's near and dear to your heart. It's what you've worked on the most, I would say. First of all, your first question was, is this a good description of being a faculty developer? It didn't resonate with me. It was too generic. You could insert football coach in there and you would have had the same answer. So I do believe that there is domain-specific expertise in being a faculty developer. I don't think you have to have the topic expertise to be a faculty development designer. And I thought that's what this paper was really about being a faculty development designer, somebody who's a leader of faculty development. I do believe that there's domain-specific expertise and PIF related to that. If you think about the people we know who quote, do and live faculty development, for example, we had a meeting this morning. There's a person who chairs our faculty development committee. They are immersed in that world. They talk a certain way. They have colleagues that they interact with a certain way. They have their own lingo, their own lit, and it took a while to get immersed in that community. So that's definitely distinct and a subspecies within medical education, health professions education.
Since Jason is answering questions, I got a question for him. Do you really believe that as a faculty developer, there's a special series of competencies that are different than what it would be to be an administrator or as an educator? So here's the example. You might facilitate small group learning. How is that different than an educator? or you might be able to plan and run a program that delivers faculty development, which is administration. Do you think there's an area in your Venn diagram that's different?
So John,
because that's what you're saying.
it's not about Venn diagrams, it's about heat maps. And I know you love heat maps. So a faculty developer heat map's a little different than the department head heat map.
You're just picking heat maps.
No. Just follow my logic here. I do have some. So just because you're a department head and you're able to facilitate a meeting or a small group discussion, doesn't mean that you can do a needs assessment or think about the high-end educational design of a small group for optimal outcomes. I think there's a different skill set. They might share some things, but not the same heat map.
Yeah. So there's the rub. And I'm going to move us forward on this. Because I was going to ask you, do faculty developers need content expertise? Lara says yes, meaning the topic expertise. Do they need process expertise? That was what Jason was talking about, doing a needs assessment, planning a curriculum. Or do they need something else? And that's when we get into some of the things they're talking about here. And then the big question, which John asked, is do they need an identity as such? So here's what these authors did. There was a demand in their school for more faculty development, and that's not surprising. Every time I go to a meeting, people say, we need some Fac Dev on that. So their institution instituted a train the trainer program. That's not that unusual. And they trained a group of medical educators to serve as faculty developers. And they used a framework similar to the Stanford framework that's been around forever. Interestingly, it actually gave people, from what I can understand, when they graduated from this, they got sort of pre-cooked curricula. So they weren't doing a lot of the curricular planning. They were doing the delivery of faculty development. And then the authors said they wanted to examine the factors that influence the PIF of faculty developers so they could then inform the creation of an environment that would, in the future, foster this. So their research question was, is there a common trajectory for faculty developers in their identity as a faculty developer as it evolves? The trouble I've got here is I'm not sure, as John was talking about, how they got from the role of faculty development or developer to the identity of a faculty developer. However, I think we should move on. I'll be very brief on the methods. They did semi-structured interviews with 2 years' worth of Train the Trainer participants. 17 out of 26 who were invited participated. They had an interview guide that was created on based on a prior study, and we really have no further information about it in the actual paper. I actually went to the reference, and that reference sent me to another reference, and that other reference sent me to a supplement. So I had to go quite far to actually find out about this interview guide, and I still don't really know what they did. They did say, and this is where we get into something that we discussed a little bit on another podcast recently. A constructivist paradigm grounded in theory was to generate new theoretical framework based on our codes and themes. That's what they said they did. And then there was a big but after that. We realized that our interpretations didn't supply such a framework. So instead, we chose to focus our examination on the social and contextual factors of developing professional identity as a faculty developer, ultimately building on existing concepts of PIF in faculty developers. So Lara, I'll ask you first, and then maybe the two boys. Is this okay? Did they just change tracks in the middle? What does this mean?
Thanks for asking, Linda. So if I understand the paper first, I'll admit to you, Linda, I did have to read it a couple of times myself to sort of piece it together. I think they thought they might generate a theory. So that's what they started with their orientation. So I'm assuming they probably wanted to start it somewhere around a constructivist grounded theory orientation, right? They wanted to see if they could generate a theory. And then they realized that they weren't going to be able to do that with the data they had. So they decided to do something that has lower inference, something that has less abstraction away from the data itself, to describe the social factors and contextual factors that impact the shaping PIF of faculty developers. So I don't really have a problem with it. We had a conversation about why one would do that before, maybe to be candid about the process. Maybe they didn't need to, because you could have shortcut just to this is what we did. But I've got no problem with that. Now, while they did label their work as constructivist, and so I appreciate that, their description of how they made their codes, it's quite post-positivist. It's all about limiting bias and ensuring standardization, or at least that's how I read it. So I have concerns about the methods. So at this stage in the paper, I see some misalignments between the research aim and the research question they offer and the work that they did in terms of paradigmatic orientation. I do take some concern with that incongruity between those. But if they stay close to just description, then in terms of the methods, I don't see any fatal flaws, no real deal breakers here for me.
John, Jason, comments on methods?
Two minor comments. The first is they did not purposefully sample. They took a convenient sample of everybody who completed the course. And so when we talk about professional identity, why not talk about some people who are pre-selection, so who are applying to it? Presumably people who took this course are earlier or mid-career and their identity formation is ongoing. Why not include some others who have been well established in that? So I'm not sure if we have a fulsome sample with which to put together the theory that they ended up with. The second part is they have a reflexivity statement that says, we really kind of participated in how we this is a value add. And so they're not doing participatory action research where you are totally enmeshed right at the beginning with learners and you build as you go. It's a very different type of study. But they have this very positive, not positivist orientation to this phenomenon. They built a curriculum. They asked the people who attended the curriculum to give them data to form their version of what a faculty development exists and looks like. And understanding there's no such thing as a view from nowhere, but they're so embroiled or they're so enmeshed in what they're doing. I do wonder, were they able to see the data in different ways that another researcher might have been able to, that they just really couldn't see their own lacunes?
In fairness, I believe they picked somebody to do the initial set of interviews anyway, who was not involved in the program. But I agree with you, everybody else was.
No, they got someone to capture the data, but not to do the analysis. And it's at the analysis stage that I'm pointing out the challenge.
I'm not so hung up on any of those issues. I do agree it was another paper we've done where people have changed their analysis mid-race, but they explain it. I get Lara's concerns about stance. I really don't think these are big deals. Like John, I was wondering about if this was the target audience, because these are relatively novice faculty developers. So would they really have a lot of insights into PIF at this stage? But they're just explicit about this is what we're sampling. This is who we're looking at. Other people can do pre and senior, but this is a study of novices. I'm good with that.
All right. So what did they find? Well, there were 8 themes that arose on what they call a common trajectory of professional identity formation as a faculty developer. And there's actually a nice little diagram of these, but I'll summarize them. And some of these are, I guess I'd say a little bit more that they're sort of almost the milestones along the way. Or the factors that might influence your identity. The first was the initial invitation, which was thought to actually have a hidden message, like there's something special about this training and about the faculty development process. Second was when these novices discovered that faculty development was a distinct professional activity. They had very little prior knowledge of Fac Dev, even though they may have had some knowledge of things like running a small group. Third, and I think this is a big one, the discovery of education theory and the skills, and then the fact that they didn't have it and they needed more education. There were growth opportunities. They needed to have an evidence base for what they were doing. Fourth, that this didn't come overnight. There was time and experience needed to put those skills and theory into practice for the identity formation. Fifth, the idea of building relationships, particularly peer-to-peer relationships, and of joining a community, especially an inter-specialty community, which for some people it seems like was something new. Sixth, the transfer of skills, and this gets on to what Lara was saying, to other roles, professional and personal. For instance, communication, group facilitation, etc., could transfer to being a more effective leader. Seventh, the experiences they had led to, they called it internal credibility, or maybe I'd call it confidence, and also to external validation. And finally, the sense that what they were doing didn't only have influence on the individuals within it, but had an influence on the organization as well, to make it a better organization. And these are on an upswinging arrow of identity formation. The part of the paper that I actually liked the best was when they took that diagram with those 8 factors or themes on it, and then plotted some programmatic elements that they could use to support faculty on their trajectory. And I would say maybe not to identity formation, but certainly to help them in their role as a faculty developer. And it's things like formal training, deliberate practice, establishing a community of practice, reflection, and things like that. So having said this, your comments on the idea of the 8 steps, we'll call it, and of linking these with programmatic elements. I'll go Lara, Jason, John.
So thanks, Linda. I think this paper is really interesting. I think they achieved their goal of creating a timeline, a trajectory of progression across time for these individuals. I'm not sure that it goes to PIF necessarily. I've got some questions there, but I think they achieved their goal of creating that timeline. Where I'm going to have a challenge that I want to suggest is in the statement where they said, examining these themes, quote, allowed us to identify vital programmatic elements that supported our faculty on their trajectory towards professional identity as a faculty developer. Because I think one of the things that could happen, or one way we might describe this, is that what they have is the outcome of their program, that their program fosters this trajectory. So I'm cautious here because they're drawing the inverse, right? They're saying that this is the trajectory and, oh, look, our program supports it. And so what I want to suggest is that we don't want to create a causal argument here because they don't have the data for causality as they suggest. The program elements might have supported PIF, and the trajectory might also have been created through the very program they generated. So my concern is that I wouldn't want to say that one brought about the other, or that one came first before the other. I want to suggest to them that this, in this piece, that we might look at that trajectory as both a result of their program, like it could be the result of what they created. It might be the program might support it too. I'm just saying that perhaps we ought not to put causality in either direction there.
I think there's some useful results here. The figure I don't love is my usual thing. It's a lot of clip art, but it assumes that there is a linearity to all of these elements. And I'm not sure if that's what the experience is like. I always, with apologies to Jean Piaget, I'm not sure if we all move lockstep, one to the next, to the next, to the next. I think there is circles, there's returns, there's advancement in one domain and others. And so the figure, I'm not sure if it's supported necessarily by their analysis. Perhaps it is and I missed it, but it implies that there's a linearity in how you might progress. And I think that's a simplification of what happens.
In fairness, John, they do say that it's not linear, but this is what they could draw from the group, that not everybody went through it at the same pace, etc.
To which case, my critique of the figure is even more harsh, which is then don't represent it that way, and don't duplicate the figure. Figure 1 and figure 2 are almost duplications with additional data points. The other part is I think these stages can be put onto an educator or put onto an administrator or put onto a researcher. I don't see the uniqueness to the faculty developer. They seem to be the stages of maturation or acquisition of special skills and abilities, which I think is important, but comes back to my first comment before of is there such a thing as unique professional identity as a subdomain, as a clinician, educator, faculty developer.
Yeah, I started reading it and thinking, even if they got a little bit more specific and talked about, I don't know, needs assessment or curriculum design, which they didn't in this paper, that could be for a CPD, continuing professional development professional, or maybe a program director would have part of that. I don't know. So I agree with you. The activities are useful. The domains are not. And I'm still having a problem figuring out whether there really is a role or an identity we're talking about here. However, time has come for our, what did Isabel call it? The currency voting. So let's talk about.
Yes.
I love encouraging.
Where's Isabel from? Which country was it?
Chile.
Okay, perfect. I'm ready.
Okay, so we will go, John, Jason, Lara, about the method sections.
You've heard my critique. I don't think they are fatal, so I give it up a 3.
And I'm going to give it 1,000 Chilean pesos.
What currency are you, exchanging to, though?
It's about 2 cents Canadian, right?
Chilean pesos. Yes, that's the currency.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a 3, but unlike you three who are a little bit short on your reasons, it's, the methods are okay. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about, there could have been a supplement with the interview questions, for instance. And more importantly, I still don't see the link between role and identity here. I don't see how they came up with the question based on the role description. All right. How about education impact? We'll reverse it now. Lara, Jason, John.
So again, I'm going to go with 1,000 Chilean pesos.
Is that, can you buy anything with a 3, Lara?
Oh, probably a temper tantrum. Yeah.
I think there's some valuable things here that you would need to translate rather than taking at face value. You've heard my critique about how they arrange their outcomes and what I think is they're fairly ubiquitous. I'm going to give it a 2.
Good. I'm giving it a 4 because I really like the program measures that could be used to support the trajectory to the role or to the identity. So there we have it. One more paper in the Papers podcast. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is it a role? Is it an identity? Are you a faculty developer? Do you agree with Lara's, and I'm talking about that as a number, 3 Lara's, or not? You can reach us at thepaperspodcast@gmail.com or through the website Papers Podcast. I see that John is actually cheering me because I didn't make a mistake on telling you how you can reach us. So, time to say goodbye. We could sing it, but we won't.
Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye. Let's try that again.
Wait a minute. Talk to you later.
Lara?
I don't know what I'm doing. You said do it again, so I did it again.
All right. Okay. It's Lara,
Hey,
Linda, John,
Nakamin,
and Jason.
au revoir.
All right? Okay. So
Adios.
let's try it once more. John was out of phase there. Lara.
Okay, I'll go. And I don't know, I did it before and you didn't like it, but here it goes again.
Yes.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Papers Podcast. We hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers Podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.